What's up, guys? My name's Marcos Garcia. Today we have a special guest, Tyson Boorman, and he's going to share a lot of knowledge with y'all today, specifically around music and his personal story and how he came to doing what he's doing now. So, Tyson, appreciate you for joining with us on Conversations with One Percenters.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. The invite.
Yes, sir. So we have a ritual. Basically, you get to ask the question for our next guest. So think of a question you would like to ask the next guest without knowing who it is and what they do.
Okay.
You got it?
You want me to answer right now? Oh, okay. If you were to die tomorrow, what would you want people to say at your funeral?
That's a powerful question. I'm glad you asked that because I actually wrote that down yesterday. I'm just doing my research and just like trying to discover my vision and figuring out like what I want to achieve in the future. And one of those questions that I stumbled across was like, what would you want people to say at your funeral? So no, that's a powerful question. So we got our question for you.
Yeah.
What's one thing in your business that if you would have done differently, your business would have moved quicker? Like if you would have done this differently in the beginning, your business would have moved quicker.
Yeah, I would have focused on the basic three parts of any business. So when I first started, I was trying to like do all like, the advanced stuff that like everyone I was looking at was doing, right? But I would have just focused on the basic three parts, which is marketing, either telling people one-on-one or creating content around whatever I was doing. Secondly, I would have been more intentional about getting in conversations with the people I was actually trying to help. So that's kind of more like the sales, but also marketing to help me with the content. And then the third thing I would do is actually build a product that people were asking for rather than the thing that I wanted to create.
Okay. So first thing you would, three things is like marketing, sales, and just talking with your customers, like your potential ideal customers, versus trying to create the product on your own or in your own head.
Yes, I mean it's basically like the three parts of product or three parts of any business, right? It's marketing, sales, and fulfillment. And so if you have those three parts, right, then it makes everything easier. And if most people, at least I was this way, right? I focused way too much on one aspect of it, and then didn't allow the other parts of the process to inform that one thing. So, for example, I was so focused on creating a product that I wanted to create rather than what people were asking for, that I created something that nobody wanted, and therefore nobody bought it because, why would you buy something you don't want?
Yep, I'm glad you said that because I still kind of struggle with that today, and that's one of the biggest things I'm working on is not creating what I love, because we all are more interested in what we love versus what other people want, but you're not gonna pay yourself pretty much.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, I think that the easiest like way to formulate the basic structure of a business if you're just getting started is to think about, well, one, obviously like talk to people that you want to help and have some general areas. So for example, like myself, I wanted to help people produce professional quality music. And so like that's very broad. And so what it would have been smart of me to do back in the day is to go out and talk to producers, musicians, anybody who's trying to get more professional music and ask them like, what do you want? Like, first of all, where are you at right now? Because if you understand where they're currently at, and then also ask them where they want to be, so then you understand the kind of transformation that they need to go through to end up in point B. So you understand A to B, and then you just create the product that fills the middle. Like it's pretty simple in essence, as long as you can deliver on that product. And so, but by asking real people what they want, then you're automatically already creating a product that people, again, want to receive and want to experience that transformation for. So
very interesting. No, I love that. So in a nutshell, can you describe what you do? You mentioned just a minute ago music, but for people watching, like what do you do and what do you help people with?
Yeah, so I have two businesses. My main education business is focused on helping rock, punk, and alternative producers produce professional quality mixes and masters, and also eventually be able to form their own mixing and mastering service that they can then monetize as a freelance business.
Okay. Is that and then your second business?
Yes. So my second business is Night Owl Music Group, which we help independent artists create careers in music. And
Okay,
so
cool.
that's generally in the form of working one-on-one, intentionally with creating strategies specifically around bringing in new fans.
Yep. All right. So yeah, I'm not a producer, but I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. So like I'm gonna say, I have a video I want you to react to real quick, and I want to kind of
Okay.
get your opinion on it. And the reason is because I was doing some research on your website, and like you talked about like music production, and a lot of people, I think, especially in the music industry, want to go viral. Is that true or false?
I would say that is the inherent desire. I don't think
Okay.
that's a good desire, but yeah, continue.
Okay. A lot of people want to go viral, and they might look at other producers or other people, like for instance, like Jay-Z, Beyonce, like all these famous people. They're doing well, you know what I mean? And they're like, I want to aspire to be that level. Now you're specifically more into the rock punk, so they're probably someone different. I'm not big into rock punk, so I don't know who those popular people are. So I'm mentioning people that I know.
Yeah. What kind of music do you listen to?
I listen to like who do I listen to? I know like 50 Cent. I like 50 Cent.
Okay.
Eminem.
Okay.
Pretty much like rap and EDM too. I like a lot of rave music.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with that being said, I know rappers who literally give their all, their whole life, and they never make it. And I'm sure that's the same with anyone in the music industry. It's not just rappers. It's country artists, punk artists, rock artists. Like they give it all, their all, but they don't make it. Is that because their production sucks, or is that because like they just aren't good songwriters and they haven't connected well with the people?
Well, I mean, I would say it's just like business where there's multiple ways to play the game, right? The goal of music, similar to business, is to play the game as long as possible. And so whether that is in the form of, doing it full time as a career, getting signed as an artist, right? Or staying independent, because there's, using the business analogy, there's like creating an entire company, 500 employees, and more. Or there's the whole like solopreneur freelancing space you could get into as well. Like they're both, essentially business models that you could follow.
Yep.
And it's similar with music, right? So there's the two, like you can go viral and go mass market, or you could be an independent artist and, not have to sell your soul to the labels and ultimately go very, very niche and have your, few thousand fans that can support you long term and to be able to play the game as long as possible. Again, like that's the goal, is just like to be able to make as much music as possible that you find fulfilling.
How many fans do you need to survive? Like to actually make this a full-time thing? Like roughly.
That's
I'm curious because you know what I mean. Like, could 1,000? Like, what would that number be?
I mean, you just have to back it up into how much is each fan going to provide you per year for then you to calculate that number, and also like how much do you want to make, right? So if you just want to survive, let's just say you're trying to make $100,000 a year, like over the average of your lifespan as a career musician. You have to have 1,000 people pay you $100, probably plus a little bit to cover your taxes, whatever. But just easy numbers: $100, 1,000 fans, you have $1,000 or $100,000 income for the year. Although I don't think that is a very good measure, because, for example, I ran into this guy who was putting on a Vegas type production,
Okay.
but the majority of it was like, he had some actors, but it was like also the music was kind of like the central part of it. And what he had done was take that, kind of concept of like a Vegas type show, and then he inserted it into, okay, let's put this in airport hangars, because he was an ex-pilot, and he then did it for millionaires and billionaires who owned jets. And so that was his like target market, was to put on a music show for millionaires and billionaires to then, and then it was also like supporting, some like it was philanthropic to some extent. And so, but like if you have that market, you can be a musician and you can put on a show like that and have one customer a year and still make your $100,000. So it's all about how you want to like approach the situation again, similar to business. You could have one client, which is Google, which pays you, a couple million a year, and you could be sitting well for the rest of your life. Or you could also be Netflix and try to serve billions of people and all have them pay you $10 a month to, stream your stuff.
So it's all going to come down to your niche, and your niche is going to determine how many people you need, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And I would say it's like most people are, as you mentioned, right? They're looking at Beyonce and, BB Rexa and whoever else, like pop artists. And they're looking at how many people they reach, and it's billions of people are streaming their songs, maybe once a year, but they earn, pennies or fractions of pennies on each of those plays that then, adds up to a sizable income. But I think that most musicians are approaching that from the wrong angle, and they really need to get super niche, and then find out like the exact person that they're trying to serve with their music, and that resonates deeply with the music the way it already is. So then you're like, you don't have that like pressure to sell out, right? And ultimately you're probably going to resonate deeper with them because you're creating the music that's authentically who you are as well. And if you do that, then those people will support you a lot more, because it's almost like a rarefied commodity, almost as if you're on the in crowd and you create this like, community, right? Is unique to you. And then when people join that community, they feel like they're special because they have created this connection. And ultimately, that's what all music is really trying to do, is just create connections between people. And so the more you can do that through other means as well, not just the music necessarily, then you can increase the value of each of the fans that you have in your audience. And so this is like also approaching it from a very like business mindset, which is usually the way I think anyway. But just like create a good time. Like if you have the best party on the block, then everybody's going to show up. And so that's kind of the idea that you want to create with your music, is just you want to have a good time, and whatever like your specific branding is, whatever your music is about, you want to just make that attractive to the right person, that's going to just vibe with you on a personal level.
No, I love that. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I am like very, very new when it comes to like what you do. So I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm basically coming at you with like a beginner's mind. I try to do my research, but like I still don't really quite understand it. So forgive me for that. But there's a video I want you to react to. It's called Everyday Bro, and I'm pretty sure you've heard of it, with Jake Paul. It has 300 million views.
I haven't actually seen the video though.
No, first time reacting to it or seeing it ever.
Yeah.
And the reason why I want you to react to this, because I really want to understand what you do and what you're looking at, and like how your mindset behind all this stuff. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Y'all can't handle this. Y'all don't know what's about to happen, baby. Team 10, Los Angeles, Cali boy. But I'm from Ohio, though, white boy. It's everyday, bro, with the Disney Channel flow. 5 mil on YouTube in 6 months, never done before. Past all the competition, man. PewDiePie is next, man. I'm popping all these checks. Got the brand new Rolex, and then met the Lambo too. And they're coming with the crew. This is Team 10, bitch. Who the hell up flipping you?
All right, we're going back. We're kind of gonna jump back and forth because I want to kind of get your reaction. All right, Jake Paul, he's not a music artist. The reason why I say this, he's a YouTuber. He's a nobody. He just magically does stuff and makes stuff successful. You're gonna get the people out there who are starting from the bottom. They're starting from nothing. What do you think first of all, what do you see when you see this video?
I mean, the first thing is like the video production is amazing, right? Like obviously he's a YouTuber, so he has those resources and those skills already. Just from like a musicality standpoint, like it's obvious that he has not refined his music skills. Like he's not a rapper, right? And so I think that's kind of like borders on one of the more interesting aspects of like misconceptions about music. And so like how to be a successful music artist is that he's approaching it from a brand and then music standpoint. And so there's kind of like those two core things that drive an artist forward. And obviously the best artists in the world have both that are extremely strong. Like Taylor Swift is the best example of that. She has a very, very strong brand, but she also has like pretty good music. And, you know, that's maybe, you know, not as objective, but most people would agree that her music is actually decent, at least. And so most artists, though, don't understand that you can approach it from either angle. You can approach it from a music first standpoint of like making sure your music is excellent and then your brand is okay, and then you can still be successful. This is the opposite of I have a really strong brand because I'm Jake Paul and I'm a YouTuber, and now I'm going to create some music that's just kind of okay. And then it's still going to be successful, though, because I have such a strong brand and such a loyal following for that brand. I'm going to leave it there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, okay. But so what do you do you want me to kill your ears with the rest of the song?
I mean, you can if you want. I don't.
What do you tell people when they say like I just want like to go viral? Because do you get that a lot? Like, do you get people saying, "Oh, let me clear this screen out"?
So I get that a lot from hip hop artists.
Like, I just want to go viral. You know what I mean? I want millions of views. I want to go viral. Like, that's the new trend nowadays is to go viral.
Right. And I don't think that serves you.
Okay.
And there's a example that I have. So locally here in Idaho, where I live, there's a metal band, and they wanted to, you know, be verified on TikTok or whatever that is called. And so they decided to just start posting all these different reels and reposting whatever they could to try to get, you know, some traction with the algorithm. And what happened was they found this video that was super funny. And it was like this truck that was turned on using a female sex organ. Okay, that's what it was. And it went viral, right? They got 17 plus million views out of it. They got thousands of new followers, but their Spotify grew from, you know, 50 monthly streams to 50 monthly streams because everybody who followed them wasn't following them for the music. They were following them because they released some entertaining content and they hoped that they would post some more entertaining content. And so by focusing on going viral, you're actually doing yourself a disservice because you ultimately won't attract the right people to your brand, right? As we discussed before, like you could have a very small audience that is very engaged that still you're able to monetize and create a career out of by having a very small audience, but they have to be highly engaged. And then the opposite of that is obviously going mass market. That's much harder to do and also harder to go viral with something that's also going to attract people to music. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that does make sense. So it's pretty much almost like a bad thing to go viral. Not necessarily, but if you're going like if you're going to create something that's going to be off brand, completely separate from what you're doing with your music, and it's like not something that naturally went viral on its own, and like that's all you're aiming for, then you're aiming for like you're going to hit a target audience that really does not care about you.
Exactly. Yeah. So because if you approach it from a purely standpoint of like, I just want to go viral, like we can make that happen. You know, we can have you set off and you're going to walk across the, you know, Sahara Desert and we're going to film you the whole way. But that has nothing to do with your music. So like you went viral, but it didn't really do anything for you, similar to, right, again, like reaching the right audience. And so the goal for most musicians is not to go viral. It's just to consistently create valuable content for the people that actually already want to follow you. So if you're, say, a rap artist, you want to produce content that's going to be attractive to fans who like rap. So using this video as the example, like there's a thing, there's a, actually one of my friends likes to refer to rap as peacocking. Like that's all it is. It's musical peacocking. And I like that term because like it's, you know, it's just showing off like what you have in your wealth and whatever else to try to, you know, be attractive to other people and, you know, because they essentially are envious of whatever you have.
Yep.
And there's a lot less money in rap music than most people think because of that kind of subculture around the genre as well. So,
Yeah, most people that they look like they have a lot, but there's probably more that they're actually doing. I'm talking about like drugs, selling drugs, in the gang violence and stuff like that.
Yeah. I was talking to an artist a while back, and we were, talking about working together, and we mentioned, having the means to pay for our services, and he mentions like, oh yeah, he's like, I'm self-employed, and like, we'll make it happen. So there's definitely that underlying current of generally they're doing something else on the side to make ends meet. Assuming they're not like an Eminem or somebody else.
I have a question. That 100,000 billboard in the back on your background.
Yeah.
What is that?
So that is an award that we give out at Night Owl Music Group if you reach 100,000 streams within 90 days. And so that was a service that we offer occasionally to artists if they, are really looking to like pick up steam really fast. Then we have a service that we can guarantee 100,000 streams within 90 days. And so that's just the award associated with that.
It looks nice. No, like that's a nice plaque.
Thank you.
Maybe you might be able to help me get 100,000 streams. You know what I mean? Like I like to possibly create some music one day. So run us through how you got started in all this. Like start us from the beginning. Like how did this even come about?
Yeah. So, I mean, it all starts with every producer's story of I was in a band in high school and we wanted to create a record and we had zero money. And so somebody in the band had to decide to raise their hand and say, I'll produce us. And that was me. I decided to, get a cracked version of a digital audio workstation, set up some mics in my basement, in my parents' basement, and figure out like how to record a band. And so that was kind of my introduction into it. Fast forward a few years, like that was kind of like a hobby I kept on the side. I went to college for accounting, and so that's actually my professional background is accounting. And so I worked in corporate America for probably 5 or 6 years before then deciding to go back into music. Kind of like reaching some dead ends in my like professional career at the time, and then wanting to kind of shift into something that I was more passionate about, which in retrospect I wouldn't necessarily say is a good idea for most people, but it's the path that I picked. And then from there I just kind of started looking at how I could serve people in the market and kind of stumbled into these two areas of educating people. So being able to produce and, mix and master music professionally for others. And then also on the other side of just building, careers with music. And it was mostly due to, I formed a studio, couldn't make it work, and then had to figure out the marketing to like try to figure out my studio, and then realized marketing's way more valuable. And that's also, again, the age-old story of almost every musician that I know, or at least producer, because they get into production, they realize they need marketing skills to make that production skill valuable. And then once they learn the marketing skills, they learn that is far more valuable. And then they end up not doing anything with music, and they are just online marketers. So,
dang. So what all goes into this? Like what all goes, so you mentioned, well, one thing I want to talk about real quick is like what actually brought you back? Because you said you went to school, you were not doing music anymore, and then you went back. So like what made you want to go back? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure, but business is hard, and sometimes I'm sure music is probably a lot harder. What drew you back knowing that this could be hard again? You know what I mean? Like this, it maybe didn't work out the first time. So like what kind of brought you back?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first thing is like I had gone to school for accounting. I had, gathered some business skills. And so I was more confident that I'd be able to make something work. That was the first thing. And then the second thing was I was like looking ahead in my, life's journey. And I realized I'm never going to actually like achieve whatever I want to via this path of I was working at a software firm doing healthcare billing at the time. And so I realized that like, even if, I stayed with that company, I was never going to like achieve the level of income, the lifestyle that I wanted to provide for myself and my family. And so that was like the inclination of like, oh, I want to start a business. And then I was looking at my skills and I realized that the only marketable skill that I thought I had at the time was music. And so then I decided to go into production to kind of pursue that of like, forging my own path, creating a career for myself rather than being beholden to, some corporate entity that didn't really care about me.
Yep, and that's how it is. I want to dive deep more into that, like this one section, because like this is kind of like where I am in my journey. So I want to see like how was it for you, like the transition of quitting and going back into music? Like what was that like? Like was it easy? Was it like a roller coaster? And then when did you actually quit?
Yeah. So it was a really weird transition. The biggest thing that supported me in that change, because I probably never would have done it had my wife not been on board. And so, because that was like one of the most surprising conversations I've ever had. So I had just bought my study materials for the CPA exam, right? If you're not familiar, CPA exam is like the next level of accounting. It's the certification that allows you to do all the things that normal accountants do. So that was, I just bought my study materials for that. And then I realized, I was like kind of looking ahead. That's kind of like what spurred on the whole, like, like, where is this path taking me essentially? And then I told my wife that I'm like, I don't know if this, accounting path is really for me. I think I want to be a music producer. And I remember we were sitting at a brunch, like at the counter. So we were like kind of like next to each other. And I just like looked over. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I think I'm going to start a studio. And like to her credit, she just looked back and she said, yeah, I think you should. And that's like the wholehearted support that not very many people have. And probably the only reason why I am here today, like doing music at all, is because of that support. Because if I was like single, I never would have had the guts to do it. But knowing that I had kind of that cheerleader in the background was ultimately the reason why I had the faith that I could do something with it.
I'm curious, did you have a lot of money saved up? Like you have a big bank account saved up at that time? Like because like these are things that are going through other people's head. You know what I mean? Like when should I quit? When should I actually go all in on this? Or when should I like leave my job? Like, how do I know this is the right thing? So like, I'm curious, like, was it like an easy transition, or was it like something you're like, oh man, if I freaking don't succeed in this, I'm back working my 9-to-5 job?
Yeah. So, no, it was not scary, but the reason is because I was extremely fortunate in having, my wife was in PT school at the time. So when she graduated from PT school, with her doctorate in physical therapy, I then was able to go like just full time into my business and building that from the ground up, having that kind of like safety net of like our family still cared for. And so I did not have very much saved up, if anything, really, before I took that leap, because we were paying for her school, right? And so that was obviously a big expense. Right after she graduated, in addition, we also then went to Germany for 4 months, lived abroad, kind of did that whole experience, which also drained our bank accounts even more. So like from the monetization, like financial standpoint, probably not the best move I've ever made. However, like there was still that safety net of like, okay, she has a stable job. We know that she can get a job anywhere, being a physical therapist. So that was kind of like the reason why it was not as scary as it could have been. And again, like if this were just me and I wasn't married and didn't have her support, it would have been I'd probably still be working at my corporate job trying to start my studio on the side. So.
Hey, no, like honestly, I'm amazed, and I admire y'all's relationship. How like was it like? How long have y'all known each other? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, so we've known each other for about 8 years. We just celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, so it does. I agree with you. It does take a onboard partner, especially like if you're in a relationship. It could make it. Sometimes it can make it easier, but sometimes it can make it harder. If they're not on board, I mean, you got to make that decision, and it will pretty much affect your relationship at that time. So no, that's cool that you had your wife on board. Like she was on board and supporting you. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think the biggest issue, honestly, like with that, because it hasn't always been easy, right? Trying to start a business.
Yep.
Yourself. it's very it can be incredibly challenging from a financial standpoint, just like emotional toll it takes on you and your family. So anybody who's you're close to, it'll also impact them. And so I would never like go into business lightly. Granted, like being on the other side of like having built something, then you realize how much work it actually took, and it's always more than you expect.
Always.
And so yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead real quick.
And so the like hardest conversations that we've had about this was actually not at the beginning. It was actually a year and a half into it, where I still wasn't earning any money because I wasn't very good at what I was doing yet in terms of like actually marketing and selling. And so that was the biggest problem essentially that we kind of ran into, is like, okay, like how long are we going to keep supporting you and doing this full time when, you know, you're not contributing to the family essentially where we kind of expected you to be. So
dang, so there was like a little rough point. And how long after that point did you actually start making money?
I mean, like I'm nowhere near where I want to be now. But it was probably about 2 years in until like I was at a state where I was like actually bringing in anything on a regular basis that was consistent, because, you know, I'd have like one-off sales, you know, one-off coaching clients that would bring in, you know, a couple thousand, you know, 3,000-4,000 at a time. And then it would just be nothing for, you know, the next 2 months. And so just like working past that consistency was incredibly difficult. And also like entirely my fault, because the one thing that you need to do if you have a business is market consistently, and just anything that you start. Like I love this quote from Alex Hormozy, because he talks about if you do something for a day, or sorry, never do something for a day if you can't keep it up for the next decade. Or, you know, I'm paraphrasing there, but essentially if it's not sustainable, don't start. And so I was constantly like, oh, I need to make money. And then I would do something, you know, for the next 24 hours and then try to like muster up some revenue, and then be stuck in the same position the next month. And then, you know, without that consistent effort, that consistent, you know, telling people, hey, I have a business, like I can help you. Without that consistency, everything never worked. And so like in retrospect, it's easy to point that out, like, oh, I was never consistent in producing YouTube videos, or I was never consistent in like reaching out to people that I knew about, you know, the services that I had. And if I had just done those two things, I would be much further along than I am today. So I guess that's another answer to your question at the beginning.
So what you're saying is you had a little bit of shiny object syndrome, or is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I can't call myself the king of that, but, you know, it feels like
I'm the king. I swear I'm the king. Definitely. Shiny object syndrome was literally my weakness for the longest time. What's the best way to ask this question? Because I know people who get in the music industry, there's a lot to do, right? There's a lot of different ways you can make money. And what do you see that's like a shiny object, and what do you see that is like the main focus? Like if you just focused on this and you ignored everything else, you have it, like from your experience and from your journey, you have a better chance of actually like making it.
Yeah, I mean, music is one of the hardest industries that way, because there are so many critical failure points in any artist's journey that have to obviously be there. Otherwise, you won't have a career. If I break it down to the simplest components, it would be you need to have an audience and you need to have a good product. And good product being both the music has to be like at a decent professional level. It doesn't have to be, you know, world class. You don't have to be hiring $1 million mastering studios to master your tracks, but you still need it to have it that like just basic industry quality. And then lastly, you also need a monetization tool on the back end, which would be something beyond just product necessarily, in terms of like a hat and a t-shirt. While those things can be valuable for a brand, ultimately that's not really what's going to like sustain you long term. You need a better model. A lot of what I see working today are communities.
Okay.
So again, like kind of like I mentioned before, it's like creating that connection. If you have a paid community, right, that has, you know, even more buy-in, you know, you release your demos to, you know, interact with on a personal level, like that is incredibly valuable. So to break it down, like those are the three components you need. which is an audience. So basically producing content to gather that audience. Good product being the music and also the merchandise that you're selling, and then also some sort of community element that's going to tie in everything together. And once you have those elements in place, everything feeds itself. And so it actually makes sense to then like run ads, for example, to acquire new listeners, because there's actually somewhere for them to go. Most musicians and artists are under the impression that like once I have good music, I just have to like market it, and then all of a sudden I'm going to blow up.
Yep.
That's not really the way it works, because the music itself is not a very good monetization tool.
So, okay. So what you're saying is like to monetize based on views is not like the best idea. Maybe like have a Patreon or something like that, or a community you're building to like your fan base is like supporting you.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And so, because if you look at it from just like a, streaming standpoint, one stream is worth anywhere between 0.3 and 0.5 cents. And so if you think about how many streams you need to get to earn even, $3,000 a month, it's in the hundreds of thousands of streams every single month. That level of momentum is extremely hard to get to when you're first starting out. It's going to take you probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years to do that if you're consistent. And that's the biggest issue, right? It's like I've been a part of bands, so many bands, that we would produce an album, we'd drop the album, and then we'd never make it to the second album. And so like all the momentum that we built with that first album would be totally done by the time I formed the next band, and that it didn't really translate right at that point. And so it's like most musicians would be successful if they're able to do one thing, meaning content and music, producing consistent music and content for a decade. Like they would be successful if they were able to do that. But most musicians aren't, because they're just like entrepreneurs. They're very creative, and they see something else. They're like, oh, I want to go do that. Or like, I want to go join this band, or, I want to completely alter everything that I'm doing, and I want to change my band or change my artist name, and I've got, etc. So they're constantly drawn away from like the one thing that they need to do, which is just be consistent in whatever you're doing.
No, I follow a guy named Charlie Morgan. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he basically talks about, and this could work for the music industry too. It's like you have you yourself, which if you're new, you're not going to know much. And then you have the vehicle, which is the driver, which drives the vehicle. So if that's music production or making music, you're starting out at year one. And if you go and then you switch to something else, you're like, oh, I want to now do this. Then you go back. Every time you start something new, you're going back to year one. And the reason why most people never see progress, and I'm going to include myself in there as well, is because we're constantly bouncing around and not sticking to something. The hard reality is it's going to take time. So
yeah. I mean, it's the one thing that, given all else, like, because nobody else can do this, it's the one differentiating factor for you. Regardless of whatever like you're trying to do in life, if you're trying to, be a baker, if you're trying to start a software company, if you're going to, XYZ, no matter what you want to do, if you are consistent in that endeavor for years, you're going to be ahead of everybody else. For example, podcasting, if you release 21 podcasts, you're in the top 1% of podcasters, because most podcasters never make it past episode 24 or 21, excuse me. And so that is automatically separates you because you're able to be consistent. And that's only like 5 months worth of podcasts, or 4 months. It's not even very many. And so that is true though, in every aspect, every avenue of business, music, anything that you do in life. If you're able to be consistent at that thing and actually be intentional about practicing it, then you will be far further ahead than anybody else. So, I mean, I would ask that of you, of like, how consistent have you been in, your one endeavor over the last, say, year?
Me, I'm not gonna lie, and I'll be brutally honest. In the last year, how consistent have I been for my endeavor? I'm gonna say probably 1 of 10.
1 of 10. Okay.
1 of 10,
so,
yeah, not consistent. I was like all over the place. And a lot of that I feel like has to do with vision. You know what I mean? Like, I was okay, what's my vision? Like, what do I really want to achieve? I feel like that's constantly changing every month because I don't have a clear vision. And that was a lot of it for me.
Yeah. So what's your current vision then?
So my current vision right now, and I actually got roasted. Are you familiar with Dan Henry?
Yeah, no, I love Dan Henry.
Yeah. So I was roasted by Dan Henry, and on his business roast, he's like, bro, he's like, what like have you done to make money? Like, what have you done to actually make money? I was like, well, I had a marketing agency at one time, and I was doing pretty good. But then even during that time, I'll be brutally honest, I wasn't focused strictly on the marketing agency. I was doing a marketing agency. I ran into a problem, and I was like, okay, like I need to find something else to make money. So I tried drop shipping during the time. I tried selling t-shirts. I tried like so many things. And then when COVID hit, I was not really all in on the business at that time. So then the business crumbled quickly, very quickly. So after that, then I started working at a bar, went even more downhill because I started drinking more and stuff like that. But I needed all that life lesson to like shape who I am now. So I'm not opposed to everything that I went through. But the biggest thing, if I would have just stayed consistent, which I'm doing now, I'm like more focused, more consistent now than I've ever been for these last, I would say like 5 months. And yeah, so I haven't been focused at all. Like over the last year, I would say a 1 of 10. Because during that time, I'm trying to think of like, what do I want to help people do? Like I've been sober because once I went through the alcohol phase and started drinking, I was like, okay, this is not who I want to be. Then I tried to get back into figuring out what I wanted to do. And I was like, I was here, I was there. And I was like, Dan Henry was like, yo, go back to what was working for you. So that's
so are you trying to restart the marketing agency then?
Yeah, but before it was all a general agency, it was just kind of like working with anyone on everything. Like I was just working with anyone, everything. You've got Instagram, you need YouTube, you need this, you need that. I was going to help you, and I was going to help you for very, very, very cheap, like $250. Like I was like the cheapest person out there. So I was like running everywhere, making like small profit margins. Like I was almost probably paying my haircut guy more than I was getting paid for helping people with marketing. So, but no, now I'm getting back into laser focused and trying to work on building like the vision and how I see like my life shaping out, and just staying purely focused on that one thing.
Gotcha. So what's your current focus then within the marketing agency? Is it, like, is it by platform? Like what are your, what's your niche?
Well, specifically the first thing everyone should be on is Facebook. Like even till today, I work with Jerry. I don't know if you know who Jeremy Haynes is. But he's the king right now when it comes to marketing agencies. And that's who I was learning from in the past, but I wasn't taking all of his advice. I was listening, but I was like doing my own thing. So I'm learning from Jeremy Haynes. He's the king, like when it comes to all that. So strictly what I wanted to help right now is who I'm looking to help is high ticket coaches, consultants scale their offers. So anyone making like 30 to 40K a month up to 100. And then like they're trying to scale further, like 50%. Everyone that I've looked up is trying to scale at least 50% from where they are right now. So
yeah, there was an awesome study done a while back that I thought was fascinating. Is that they were looking at individuals, right? And they asked them like, how much money are you making? How much money do you want to make? And the consistent answer across, no matter how much money people made, the answer was always 80% more of what they're currently making. So if you're making 100 grand today, the answer is always, I want to make 180 grand. Mm-hmm. There's always like the outliers, right? Who's like, I want to earn $1 million a year. But that's like consistent across like all humans, is that obviously we all want to grow. We always want to grow consistently. But we all want to like reach that next, 80% of like personal income, which would probably translate, right? If you have a $30,000 coaching business, if you scale that up to 100K, like you're probably, taking home at least of that 80% ish additional income, given that, obviously scaling up, generally you encounter like higher ad costs, like, more, higher, like, cost of customer acquisition, etc. So it makes sense.
So like you mentioned you want to talk about offers. Like that's one thing you might want to talk about, but I want to talk to you about your offer, what you actually offer. I want to kind of dive deep into that. So I know you talked about what you do, but like, what are you like? If you had to pick, you have 2 offers. If you had to pick one, which one would you want to focus on?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm working on right now is refining my offer for my education business, and
Okay.
so we can talk about that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Right now, what my offer is to help rock, punk, and alternative producers produce professional music through mixing and mastering. And so right now, I'm developing like a 10-week program to take people from wherever they're at, and by the end of those 10 weeks, be able to produce professional quality music for themselves or their clients.
And how important is it? How important is it to produce professional music? Like break down the reality. If you're not producing professional, like what pains are you going to experience?
So if you have a music that is not mixed and mastered well, it's kind of that gut reaction that you have when you are on a playlist on Spotify, say, and you're just listening to it. Then all of a sudden this song comes on and it just sounds bad. It's muddy. It's unclear. You can't tell what the vocalist is singing. It's just not good. You're going to hit the skip button every single time because you're not going to enjoy the song. And so all of mixing and mastering really is it's like the Photoshop of the music world. But ultimately, it's really about getting out of the way to allow the song to be presented in the best light possible. And so if that isn't done well, then the song won't be presented in a very positive light, and therefore nobody will care. And so if like all else fails, you can have an okay brand, or if you have a great brand and you have a great image, you have professional photos, you even have good songs, but the mix and master is poorly executed, then nobody's going to care anyway. And so you could have traffic coming in, you can get a few thousand streams a month, but nobody's going to stick around long term because they can't enjoy the music for what it is.
No, I can relate to that, and the reason why I can relate to that is because whenever I had a horrible podcast mic, like even I listened to my own podcast and I was like, I don't want to hear like 2 more minutes of this because like it was just my words were like they were just like all together, and you couldn't hear crystal clear. So sound is if it sounds good, you're gonna listen for a little bit longer than you would if it was just like scratchy or background noise and things like that. So
I was actually
go ahead.
I was talking to one of my cousins, and she is in media, so she's a journalist, and she was doing some research on like how to like create her own stories better, etc. And she found out that 70% of video quality is attributed to audio. And so basically you could have the best, nicest looking camera, visual, but if the audio is bad, then all of a sudden you're brought down from an A to 30%, which is below failing. And so the audio is actually more important. And so that they would show participants in a study the same video, but it was in like 480p versus high def. And when they switched out the audio, though, the higher quality audio was still deemed as the 480p was still thought of as higher quality than the actual high quality video. And so there's so much that's due to like audio specifically and its quality.
Yeah, so if you're only audio and you're only on Spotify, it really matters. Like that's what you're rolling with. And if you're not, if you don't sound good and people can't hear you, then it's not really going to work out too well. Do you help with like beats too? Like, do you help people with beats?
So no.
Okay.
I don't like the beat market in general.
Okay.
The reason is that beats are making music too accessible. So let me explain that though. So when beats came to be a thing, right? There's beat makers giving away free beats. It makes it so accessible for anybody and their brother to be a rapper. And essentially all those beats are produced specifically for a very, limited number of genres. So rap, hip hop, and R&B basically. And so there's now like phone apps that allow you to listen to or rather create your own music using these beats. So you basically get free beats from the app. then you record audio on your phone, and then you have a song.
Yep.
And so it's fun to play with. Like if you're just as a hobby, like go for it. You know, that's the thing. But if you're trying to create a career and move forward meaningfully, you can create 100 songs like that, and none of them are going to be perceived as professional, even if you're the best rapper in the world. Versus if you just go to a studio, do one song. Yeah, it's going to cost you $1,000 maybe to do that. But if you are intentional about that one song, it's going to be far better than the other 100 that you created. And so it's making music cheap in those specific genres. And so they're just so saturated that it turns people off those genres entirely.
Yep.
And so I think rap and hip hop are deemed as like low quality music because of this phenomenon that beats have allowed the music industry to be overly saturated with that specific genre and also cheapen everything overall.
Interesting. So I'm kind of curious of who you I know who you help. You mentioned who you help in the 3 genres that you work with. But at what I'm wondering what level could you work with anyone at like beginner level? Do they need like a year into this? Like what?
Yeah. I mean, the basic requirements that I have for people to work with me is that they have produced a song in the past.
Okay.
Basically, they know how to use the tools of the trade to like the very minimal degree. And the way that I am able to take those people to the professional level is actually through objective mixing. And so the big misnomer in the music industry is that mixing engineers, mastering engineers just happen to be more talented than everybody else. And it seems like magic in what they're doing. But in reality, there's an objective measure of what actually sounds good to humans due to our own biology. And therefore, there's an objective measure that we can meet in the mixing and mastering process to then have stuff that is objectively professional. Because if we look at all the top 100 Billboard songs, they're all deemed as professional. And if you ask anybody, for example, Marcus, are they all professional? Like you would probably say yes. But if that weren't, so if the objective truth wasn't there and it was subjective, then you would probably say, oh, these 30 are not professional. But you probably don't say that because there is an objective measure. Yep. So that's essentially like I break down this very complex topic of mixing and mastering into these are the objective standards that you need to hit for this thing to be seen as professional. As long as we hit those, it's going to be professional. So then you can be creative on top of that. But as long as these 5 things are met, then you're good.
Okay. I like that. Drake. What you know about Drizzy Drake? I do have a question about Drake because Drake has built a brand, and I feel like all his songs are like the same beat ish. Like he's got like the same style. I know that people say like the old Drake, the new Drake, but if like in a summary, all Drake songs are like the same. How can people build? I'm not sure if you're like an expert on this, but like just curious, like. How you talked about it earlier. How can people build their brand, like their actual brand?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge topic.
Yeah, like you know what I mean? Because or just like you don't have to go too deep into this, but like maybe give like one small tip someone can do to like find their brand and niche, maybe.
Yeah. So I love Alex Ramos's definition of brand because I think it's the only operational brand or definition that you can find, because if you look at any textbook it's really confusing, but Alex's definition of brand is it's an association with the unknown to the known, right? So if I'm an artist and I'm just starting out, nobody knows me, so if you see Tyson Boorman, like that doesn't mean anything to anybody. However, when I then start associating that with consistent like visuals, topics. So if I just let's use a different example. If I'm starting a podcast and I just talk about Pokemon the whole time, and then people will start associating the brand Tyson Boorman with Pokemon, because that's what I talk about all the time. And so that's the same process that musicians have to go through as well. And so I don't know Drake well enough to be able to like break down his brand for you. But like, I'm sure that there are very, very consistent things that he talks about all the time that create that brand around him. And so even as you mentioned, like all his beats sound the same, and it's probably because his mixing engineer has a template for him that they slap on every single time to make it efficient. But like he has a very consistent sound, and that sound doesn't really evolve that much over time, or like, you know, maybe slowly over time. And so therefore, like people associate that sound with Drake every single time. And so he's done that consistently enough over time to then create a brand around that particular sound. And so you can do this with anything. If you want to create a brand, you just come up with, you know, say 2 to 3 things that you like to talk about that, you know, you want to be related to. And then you just talk about them all the time and produce that in your content, in, you know, one-on-one conversations you have with people, in any interviews that you have. You just talk about that same thing over and over, and then people will then start to associate that thing with you. And so if a good example is polar bears. Polar bears are associated with Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola has a polar bear in every single ad that they run, or, you know, 99% of them. And so when we would then look at Coca-Cola, we now have this like fluffy, like, you know, polar bear type feeling when we think about Coca-Cola. And so that's the ultimate like brand in a nutshell of what you're trying to build as an artist, or a business, honestly, with just anything that you're trying to do branding.
Just stay consistent with the things that you like want to resonate with your brand. I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're wrapping it up. I do want to do a second podcast with you. I feel like we barely even scratched the surface. Like I feel like I didn't even like if it's a lottery, I just like scratched one number, and I'm like, there's still so much that like we have yet to uncover here.
Yeah,
like,
I'd love to. So
I'd be down to do another podcast. I have another one coming up here in like 4 minutes, but I would love to have you back on and kind of dive deeper. And I'm just like, I'm at like a beginner's mind with all this. So I want to really like understand it and understand what you do. And maybe next time you can, cause you produce your own music as well, right? You have?
Yeah. I have a couple songs out there.
So maybe you can shred for us.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I fake it when I'm in my artist mode, because, you know, being a producer, you can make things sound better than you actually do.
I agree. So Tyson, where can people find you if they're looking to learn more about your services?
Yeah, so if you want to just learn more about mixing in general and kind of that objective framework that I talked about, I have a book that I wrote called The Objective Mix. You can find that at theobjectivemix.com. If you want to learn more about mixing and mastering and that whole world of music production. If you just want to find more of my content, I have a ton of stuff on Instagram. It's at Dinosaur Dog Studio is where you'll be able to find that. So
perfect. Yeah. I'll include the link in the comments below. So everyone, if you are interested, click the link in the comments below and I'll shoot you directly to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus.
Yes, sir.